everyone. Good evening and welcome to our third episode of Growing Grace Live series. And for this evening, we have a very special topic, and that is what is mental health. Mental health is as important as physical health. We need both a healthy body and a healthy mind to achieve a peaceful, stable life. Around 1 out of 4 people around the world suffer from mental illness, from helping your own mental health to helping those close to you. So, for this evening, we have a very special guest, and let me share some of his background.
Who is Mr. Ari Verzosa? He joined Philippine Airlines from 1986 to 1998 and graduated as class president and valedictorian. He was even recruited by PAL to join their management team and also became part of elite flight crew who flew with the world's VIPs. And after flying for the last 12 years, he decided to resign and return to his favorite city, Baguio. 20 years experience as an entrepreneur, a motivational speaker for 12 years, and of course, a well-known mental health advocate for 10 years. And chosen as one of a handful of the certified mentors for the government program, Go Negosyo Mentor Me program. But wait, there's more! He is also the father of Miss International 2016, Kylie Verzosa.
He is a father of 5 and a husband to 1. Hello, Manong!
Hi, Christine. Is it good afternoon or good evening sa mga
Yes,
nanonood?
now it's
Anong oras dapat?
afternoon.
It's afternoon. Good
Yes. Now it's
afternoon to
4, 4 here in
Oh,
Manila.
4. Okay. So sa mga
Yes.
tumataguyod sa show natin ngayon. Yeah. Magandang hapon. Anyway, thank you so much for inviting me, Christine. And it's a privilege for me to be here and to be given the opportunity to share to your audience whatever I can share about mental health. Maraming salamat.
Thank you. Thank you, Manong, for accepting the invitation.
My pleasure.
Okay, so before we start with our topic this evening, I just want to ask you, Manong, how are you now? Kasi in a few days, 2021 na.
Okay, how am I? I know, most of the people, I've seen their reactions and I've talked to a lot of people. And this can be a very depressing time. Pero believe it or not, Christine, masaya ako. I'm really happy this whole pandemic. It was a blessing para sa akin. For one, let's take a look at it this way. It's a matter of perception and pananaw. If you have a positive mindset, then you can decide to look at this situation in a positive way. And that's how I decided to look at it. So this time has given me the chance to spend more time with my family. It has given me more time to rest because of all the businesses ngayon. I have more time to rest. I develop new skills, new talents also. And believe it or not, I'm an introvert. I love spending time on my own. So sa akin, it's a blessing. So alam ko tutuloy pa rin to, no, for the next couple of months or another year. And for me, like I said, it's good. I know next year will be an improvement kasi for the majority of people, madami silang pinagdaan. I am aware of that. So I do hope that 2021 will be a much better year for everybody naman.
Yes, of course. I can't wait for 2021 with everything that happened this year.
For you, how was this pandemic for you?
This is what pandemic made me do. Now I'm a YouTuber and as also a live streamer, kaya I'm so happy.
Now that's what I mean, Christina. No, this pandemic has opened opportunities for some people.
Yes, yes,
Like
yes.
nakulong sila, and they
Mm.
lost them, they can't do anything, malungkot sila. But there are some people like you, diba, who have taken advantage of this
Yes.
situation. And that's good. That shows that you have a positive mindset. Way to go. Okay yan.
Okay, Mano, I think we're ready to start with our topic this evening, and I'm sure all of our viewers will benefit from it. So, are you ready, Manong Ari?
I was born ready, Christine. Let's do that.
Okay, so who was Ari Verzosa before becoming a mental health advocate?
Um, okay, aside, after being in the airlines for 12 years, that's where my life as an entrepreneur started. And you can consider me as a serial entrepreneur because I would put up a business almost every 2 to 3 years. So I set up a business and then pag tumatakbo na yan, okay na yan. I'd look for another business. So I was an entrepreneur. I was a workaholic. But unfortunately, medyo my priorities weren't right because I spent, I would think, about maybe 70-80% in the business. And yung natitirang 20-30% went to spending time with my family, and a little time was spent for me. And I'm sure you're aware na yung priority natin sa buhay, hindi dapat negosyo. Ang priority sa buhay natin is supposed to be family. And that only changed after I became a mental health advocate and I realized some things. So things change.
Well, thank you for sharing, Manong. Hey, Mano, so from an entrepreneur, how did you become a mental health advocate?
Okay, interesting question, ano? And I always get that question. Um, let's put it this way, ano, Christine. I didn't choose to become a mental health advocate. It's more like mental health uh, chose chose me. Allow me to explain that. Full disclosure sa inyong lahat. I have a mental health disorder. I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder over 12 years ago. Take note, sinabi ko, I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder. Hindi ko sinabi na I am bipolar disorder because there's a saying that goes, as you think, so shall you be. So, if in my mind, ang iniisip ko lang, may bipolar disorder ako, that's how I will be defined. Pero hindi. I choose to define myself as more than a person with bipolar disorder. So I am Manong Ari the entrepreneur, Manong Ari the husband to Raquel. I am Manong Ari the father to five, and Manong Ari the mental health advocate. So I refuse to make my disorder define who I am. Okay? So balik tayo doon. I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder over 12 years ago, and ever since then, I have been on a cocktail of medications, anywhere from 5 to 7 meds. That's how much I drink every single day to remain in this state. So what you can see is a product of somebody who's been taking medication for the last 12 years and has to see a psychiatrist regularly. Now, note, it's actually a family advocacy because my two daughters, Chelsea, my second daughter also has a mental health disorder, and also Kylie has a mental health disorder. But here's something important I want you to know. Na ang pagkakaroon ng mental health disorder or as we call it, hindi dapat ito hadlang para makamit nyo yung mga goals, dreams, and aspirations nyo. It shouldn't be a hurdle. If you take a look, let's say at my second daughter, she actually has 3 disorders. But in spite of that, she's an assessor for TESDA, successful entrepreneur. Look at Kylie. Kylie has a mental health disorder. She has depression. She was diagnosed. She was diagnosed with depression and anxiety disorder. But in spite that, tignan mo yung nakamit ni Kylie. She's Miss International, artista siya. Manong Ari, diba? Disorder, 12 years. But in spite of that, several businesses, several employees. So take note, it is not a hurdle to achieve your dreams and goals, even if you have a mental health disorder. So kami, useful pa rin kami.
It's my first time to hear that. Grabe. Hindi ko alam mafe-feel ko knowing that, alam mo yun, despite everything, you still chose to motivate people and to continue with your advocacy as not just you but the whole family. And I'm so proud of you, Manong.
Thank you. Thank you.
Manong Ari, before we move on to our next question, I just want to ask you kasi most of the people think that depression and sadness have the same meaning. So can you please explain to me and to all our viewers the difference between depression and sadness?
Um, Take for example, let's say ikaw, Christine. Si Christine nakipag-away sa boyfriend niya.
Mhm.
Okay? And then, hindi na kami nag-usap ni Bay for, a week or a month. And then you say, that's what they call, di ba? Or Bay, whatever. For 1 month,
Mm.
depressed ako. Or let's
Mm.
say, nag-post ka, you posted something, and then halos wala nag-like, depressed ako. That's what they
Mm.
say, ano? But, what happens? Kung yung boyfriend mo dumating, they bring you a bouquet of roses. Ay, babe, di ba? Ang bango-bango nga, maraming salamat, di ba? Love kita, di ba? Bati na tayo. Suddenly, wala na yung pagka-depress mo.
Oo nga.
Correct?
Oo
It
nga.
gets
Correct.
lost.
Correct.
Now,
Mm.
the same thing, if you post, and then the next day, ang dami nag-like, instantly,
Yeah.
hindi ka na depressed. Happy ka.
Yeah.
Why? That's not depression. That is
Mm.
sadness. And that
Sadness.
sadness is an emotion. And
Mhm.
being an emotion, that can change from 1 minute to another.
Mhm.
Unlike depression or clinical depression, that thing will last for at least 2 weeks. That will go from 2 weeks to several months, for some even years. At hindi basta nawawala yun. Yun ang difference ng
Mhm.
sadness and depression. So when people say, ay, depressed ako, depressed ka ba talaga? Or baka nalulungkot ka lang or frustrated ka lang. The reason why it's important, is because people think when a person is, okay, depressed or
Mhm.
sad,
Mhm.
maraming parents, like the children, go to the parents and they say, ma, talagang, ang tagal-tagal na nito, parang nalulungkot talaga ako or I feel bad. What do the parents normally say? Ay, nag-iinarte ka lang eh, di ba? Or ano ba yan? OA mo naman eh. Positive ka lang dapat. This comes from the parents mismo because they are not aware that there is such thing as a disease. Take note, a disease called depression. They only realize it afterwards pag nagpakamatay na yung anak nila. And I have seen that over and over again. At ilang beses na ako nakilamay or pumunta sa patay dahil yung mga anak nila nagpakamatay. Bakit? Kasi hindi nila alam na may depression pala. And that is the worst thing that can happen because uh, a parent should never bury their children. It shouldn't happen. But because of their ignorance of depression, it happens way too often. And the thing is, suicide is preventable. And like I said, positive mindset, diba? Look at the bright side, diba? I know there are wrong things that are happening, pero kung maganda yung pananaw mo sa buhay, diba? You can always choose to look at the bright side. Now, I'm not saying that palaging positive, na everything is positive. Hindi. There's always bad things that happen to you. But like I say, life is 10% of what happens to you, 90% of how you respond to it.
Yes, that's true. Okay, Manong. As someone with a disorder, is it more difficult for you to handle stress? And what are the consequences when someone with a disorder cannot cope?
Um, yes, it is more difficult because, in a way, people like us with a disorder, we're more we're more sensitive. In the way, yung mga bagay-bagay na pwede hindi mag-trigger sa ibang tao it may it may trigger us a lot. Take for example in the office, in the office there's normally office politics. For some people, that's not really a problem, but for many of us with a disorder, nakaka-stress yon to the point that they resign from their jobs. Why? Take me for example, I have to know how to handle the stress. Sa akin, ang stress is when let's say when I work too much, I'm overworked. Emotional can be a stress factor sa akin. Now, in my case, and for a lot of people who have disorders, if you don't work on these triggers and you can't cope too well, you can end up in a deep state of depression, and now you end up with suicide ideations. Now, ito yung delikado yung nag-iisip ka na magpakamatay and um, ways of ways of doing it. And that's what's very dangerous because, let's say in my case, bipolar disorder, it has one of the higher percentages of people who try to take their lives through suicide. Take note, I mentioned take their lives through suicide because people in the mental health community don't want to use the term to commit suicide. So people in my disorder, 14 to 27% will try to take their lives through suicide. Now, the thing is, suicide is very preventable. And the key to doing this is early intervention. And if you do that, you're able to prevent suicide. Now, ito sa akin yung parang life cycle of somebody who intends to take their life through suicide. Parang ganito yun this is their life and may red line dito. Okay? Now, before dumating sa red line, pwede mo pa silang kausapin. You can talk to them. You can tell them, that we still care for you. Because during the time, they are still logical and they're still coherent and they will listen to you. Pero pag tumawid na yon sa red line na yon, they are no longer coherent. They are no longer logical. So, people like me who have gone to that state, hindi na namin iniisip kung magpapakamatay kami. Magpapakamatay talaga kami. So, taking our lives is not an option. It becomes a foregone conclusion. Now, it is only through the grace of God that you will survive taking your life or you stop. Like I said, it's only through the grace of God. Um, I know this. I know this personally, firsthand, because one of the deepest, darkest episodes that I had, I was with my son. His name was Yuri. He was my youngest son. This was in the afternoon, late afternoon. I was with my son Yuri. We were together lang in bed. Tulog siya, pero niyayakap ko siya. Now, my four kids were in school, and Raquel, my wife, was a professor in the university. So kami lang yun nasa bahay. And hindi ko na nakayanan yung sakit na dinadaan, na something that I was feeling. It's hard to describe that feeling, Christine, but it's a kind of pain na I call it parang nakabalot sa kumot ng kalungkutan, where you feel totally you feel hopeless, wala nang pag-asa, and yung pain masakit iba. It's hard to describe it. So it came to the point na hindi ko na nakayanan yung sakit na yon. So I took out my gun. It was a 40 caliber. I checked my cartridge to make sure may bala. I loaded it. I cocked it to make sure the barrel had at least one bullet. And I stuck the gun to my head. As I was pulling the trigger, suddenly may thought na pumasok sa utak ko. Pag pinutok ko to, magigising si Yuri sa katabi ko. At makikita niya yung tatay niya, nakahilata na lang, patay, sabog na yung utak, blood all over. And I thought, is this the last memory that I would like my son to remember? Because for sure, hindi niya makakalimutan yon. And after that thought, binaba ko yung baril ko. So were it not for Yuri, I'm sure Christine hindi mo ako kausap ngayon. You'd be talking to someone else. I would not be here. Yuri is he's my lifesaver. I call him he's my energizer bunny. During the time pag kailangan ko ng lakas, siya yung nilalapitan ko. And I just hug him to try to recharge. And something else I'd like to share with people, something we have in common, because I've had a chance to talk to other people who have tried to take their lives. On the last second that you try it, you will think of a loved one. I had the chance to talk to Gab Valenciano, yung anak ni Gary Valenciano. He's also bipolar, and he had 3 attempts on his life. In one of his attempts, he took overdose of the pills, drank water. As soon as he did that, tinawagan niya si Gary. Dad, I overdosed on my pills. Can you please pick me up? Gary rushes home, picks him up, and brings him to the hospital. I have another friend also. He tried to hang himself 3 times. And I asked him, habang nakalambitin ka, I know that sounds terrible, what was running through your mind during the last few seconds? And he said, I thought of my youngest son. And sa akin, this is like God telling you, Ari, last chance mo na to. Or Gab, last chance mo na to. Here, di ba? I'll put something in your head. And like I said, it's only by the grace of God na nandito ako and the other people who have survived, trying to take their lives.
Naiyak ako. Grabe, Manong. Ay, nako, grabe yung shinare mo. I felt so emotional. And yes,
Sorry.
I'm very blessed that you're here. Thank you so much for sharing that on our episode, Manong Ari.
Uh, it's hard to make people understand what depression or having a mental health disorder is all about, because the only people who can truly understand yung mga may mental health disorder ay yung mga meron din, kasi alam nila yung feeling at yung pinagdaanan nila. As I explained it to you, Christine, this whole thing about mental health, I'm sure you will understand it. But in order to fully understand, to grasp it, to empathize with the person, dapat na-experience mo. Okay, take for example you, Christine, let's say you were born blind. Okay, you were born blind, and then you come to me and say, Manong Ari, I hear people talking about the color blue. Manong Ari, paki-explain naman sa akin yung color blue. Now take note, you were born blind. Whatever noun, adjective, verb, or any way I try to describe it, hindi mo makukuha talaga kung ano yung color blue. Why? It's because you haven't seen it and you haven't experienced it. So that's the same thing with trying to fully understand somebody who undergoes depression. That's why one of the things you don't tell a person with depression uh, is when you tell them and they tell you na they feel bad, they feel down, they don't feel like doing anything, and then sasabihin mo, yeah, I know how you feel. Really? You know how we feel? You have to go through the pain, the sorrow, and the suffering to truly understand somebody who has it.
Manu Ari, being a motivational speaker, what advice can you give people on how to handle stress, most especially in this time of pandemic?
Um, okay. For me, the most important thing, like I said, is having a positive attitude or having a positive mindset. Um, like I said, there's always negative things or bad things that happen around you. But this is a choice. Take note, huh? You can choose to focus on all the negative things that surround you, or you can choose to focus on the things that you can do to improve your situation. Take, for example, you, Christine, di ba? During this pandemic, what did you do? You decided to put up this YouTube channel, you put up this vlog. That's something productive. That is taking control of the situation. Now, like I say, do not be a victim of your circumstance. You take charge of your circumstance and do something about it. Find things that you can learn, find something that you can do. Take for example, okay, let me use as an example. I've always wanted to learn speed reading because I have a lot of books na hindi ko nabasa. An average person reads about 250 words per minute. After taking a course during this pandemic for 30 days, I now read 600 words per minute. So, yung mga libro dati na it takes like 2 weeks to read, in 1 week, natapos ko na. So, during this pandemic, and this will still continue, try to develop a skill or a talent. Let's say you want to learn how to sing, like Christine. Gusto mo talaga. What if you practice every day, even just for 1 hour? 1 hour every day. For the next 6 months or 1 year na tuloy-tuloy pandemic na to, can you imagine how good you're going to be? There are some, plantitos, plantitas. Ako plantatay because I also experiment. You start, di ba? If you start planting, di ba? Can you imagine how much you would have produced? In my case, I'm experimenting with hydroponics. So I'm planting lettuce and pechay with no soil. This is just water. Okay?
Wow.
The next 6 months, can you imagine how much I'll be harvesting every single month? Pera yun.
May
Kikita.
farm ka na.
May farm na ako noon, di ba? And that's putting this pandemic to good use. So, other things you can do. You should have a routine. Okay, follow a certain routine. Um, in my case, I wake up in the morning, I meditate for about 30-40 minutes, and then after the meditation, I exercise first about another 30, at least 30-40 minutes, and then I have breakfast. After breakfast, I listen to motivational tapes or videos, and then afterwards I check on the business, and then afterwards I go to web design or whatever I have to do. So have a routine, do something. Okay, something also you can do during this pandemic, have a journal. If you want, here's something you can do. In 30 days, follow this. And I can guarantee you in 30 days, your life, your perception, yung pananaw nyo sa buhay, mag-iiba. Simple lang to. This is what you do. At the end of the day, list down 3 things that you are grateful for. It doesn't have to be a really big thing. It can be, I'm grateful that I was able to learn how to cook. Or the bigger ones, I'm grateful that I'm alive. I'm grateful that I'm with my children. Diba? That's, do that for 30 days and your life will change. Kasi kung minsan, pag gising natin sa umaga, ang dami na natin reklamo. Diba? Why do we do that? Why don't we try to wake up and then thank God for the blessings that we have today, that we're alive again, or for the blessings that we have received yesterday? Here's a suggestion. Okay? When you go to sleep at night, yung chinelas nyo, ilagay nyo sa ilalim ng kama nyo. Paggising nyo sa umaga, syempre, luluhod kayo. Kukunin nyo yung chinelas nyo. Habang nakaluhod kayo, magdasal na rin kayo. Magpasalamat kayo sa Diyos sa lahat ng biyaya na binigay sa inyo. these are some of the things you can do during these pandemic times to feel good.
Wow, those are all great advice. And Manong, I love the part na gumawa ng journal and to list three things that you are grateful for. Ako, to be honest, medyo tamad akong magsulat. Pero after you said that, I was motivated.
Try it. Do this. Promise me you'll do this. 30 days, get in touch with me and tell me
Yes, yes.
what has changed in your life in those 30 days. As long as you do this, three things, 5 minutes lang. Yun lang. That's all it takes.
Okay, okay. To all our viewers, please do the same. I'll update you on my social media how it worked on me, and you can also do the same. Thank you, Manong, for sharing.
Welcome.
Okay, now, Manong, I believe that traumatic events are considered as factors. Can traumatic events in one's life, going as far back as childhood or past experiences, cause mental illness?
Um, Good question. Um, for one, one of the things that causes okay, two things. You have the genetic side of it, the genetic side of it. But it doesn't mean, for example, genetic side doesn't mean if your parents have it, you're going to get it. That's not the case. Okay, it just makes you more predisposed to it. So you have the genetic factor and the environmental factor. Ito yung nature versus nurture. Uh, Stress really causes mental health disorder. Now, there are some things that you may have experienced in your past as a child, where you may have been traumatized. This is sad, but you could have been physically, emotionally, or sexually abused as a child, and it happens that you have the tendency, your mind trying to protect you, it will block out itong mga memories na to and hindi mo maaalala. But you will have flashes of it. Now, in one way or another, lalabas to and it will affect you as you become, let's say, a teenager. And yes, this past experiences, PTSD, post-traumatic stress syndrome, this can come out and cause a mental health um, disorder. So yes, your past experiences may cause a mental health disorder. If you believe, if you believe that you went through something in your past at ito yung trigger nyo, then you really have to see a mental health professional for this one. So allow me to explain something lang, because I mentioned there are two things, the genetic factor and the genetic factor, in the sense that not because your parents have it doesn't mean you're going to get it all. So like sa akin, I have it and I passed it on to two of my daughters. I have 5 kids, only 2 got it. Now, if there's something that I want to pass into the audience, is this. Ihaling tulad nyo ang pangkaisipan na karamdaman sa mga pisikal na karamdaman katulad ng cancer, diabetes, and tuberculosis. Equate it. Look at it in the same way. Mental health disorder, other physical disorders. Parang ganito yon. When somebody dies of pancreatic cancer, something goes wrong with an organ. That's the pancreas. When somebody dies of a heart attack, something happens to an organ, his heart. When people like us take our lives by suicide or have a mental disorder, there is something wrong with an organ. Our brains, okay? Our brains do not function properly. We're not thinking right. We're illogical. So, pag may nagpakamatay, huwag niyong bintangan yung tao. Kasi hindi niya kasalanan. When a person dies of a heart attack, binibintangan niyo ba? When a person dies of pancreatic cancer, do you blame the person? You don't. And it's the same thing when a person takes his life through suicide. Do not blame the person because the brain is not functioning properly. Pero more often than not, I see this. I see posts. They say, ano ba yan? Nagpakamatay. Ang hina-hina niyan. Duwag niyan. He's a coward. Konting bagay lang. Lumagpak lang yan. nagpakamatay na. Or broken-hearted, nagpakamatay na. Hindi ganun yun. There was something wrong that happened in the brain. Okay? So please, wag nyo sila. Wag nyo kaming bintangan sa mga oras na hindi matino yung pag-iisip namin. Okay?
Okay.
Now, uh, having a bipolar disorder, this is what happens, you know. Our brain cannot regulate yung happy hormones. We have the happy hormones, yung serotonin and dopamine. Pag yung brains namin nagbuga ng serotonin, dopamine, happy kami. Yeah! Super happy, di ba? Pag tumigil yan, and we cannot control this, ha? Pag tumigil yung pagkabuga ng serotonin and dopamine, we end up in depression. And it's something we cannot control. In the same way that if, let's say, you're suffering from diabetes, okay? When you're suffering from diabetes, there's something wrong with your pancreas. Your pancreas does not secrete enough insulin. Now, for example, kumain ka ng tsokolate, diba? After eating all the chocolates, can you tell your pancreas, hoy, pancreas, mag-secrete ka nga ng insulin kasi madami akong tsokolate na kinain. Can you do it? No, you can't. In the same way that we cannot control the hormones that is being secreted by your brain. It's beyond our control.
Okay, so Manong Ari, aside from the stress factors that you mentioned earlier, what are other usual triggers?
Uh, just about anything, you know, day-to-day lives can
Mhm.
trigger you. Now, it doesn't have to be a trigger na mabigat. But as you go through life, daily things na simpleng bagay lang. Let's say, for example, in the office, like I said, nasistress ka sa office. Kaya mo yan for a day or two. You go home, may problema ka, let's say, family problems or with your in-laws, if you're married. The stress can also be financial, okay? Stress can be relationships. These things, mga simpleng bagay lang yan, ano? If you take it individually, kaya pa yan. But if you put all of these things together and it goes on for several months or several years, this becomes heavy and that becomes a problem. At the end, after several years, ito, this can lead now to having a mental health disorder. So, like I said, there are things that you can do that can help. It's no guarantee, but it may help. Having a positive attitude, again, that's very important. Kasi pag may mga dumating na problema, kasi the pandemic, for example, where a lot of people are suffering, and I've said this over and over to your show, if you have a positive mindset, dumating yung problema, yung pandemic, you're doing something good about it. It's not all that bad, di ba? Some people, again, iba yung pananaw nila. Suffering, nakakulong sila, walang magawa. So, that's what I mean when I say having a positive mindset helps. If they have the right medication and they see a psychiatrist, they can live a normal life. So this is part of the stigma na wala nang pag-asa yon. So how do we make it that people like that can open or can be treated? Again, it's awareness. Let's talk about it. This is where shows like yours come in and you make people aware. And again, if people are aware of what's happening, they're now more knowledgeable about these people. Instead of making fun of them, they can find ways and means of helping them. If you see somebody, like taong grasa sa kalye, dalhin nyo sa DSWD yan. Here in Baguio, they offer free consultation also. Dalhin nyo yan sa hospital. Pwede nyo tulungan. If you are one of those in the province, diba, na kinukulong nyo yung kamag-anak nyo, dalhin nyo sa psychiatrist. Okay? Normally, you have psychiatrists in the province who offer free consultation. Tulungan nyo sila. Dalhin nyo na psychiatrist. Huwag nyo po sila ikulong because something can be done about it. I know somebody here in Baguio. Yung trigger niya was yung pag-aaral niya. She's been going to college for I think 3 years already. Why was it a trigger? It was because yung course na kinukuha niya, hindi niya gusto. Fino-force lang siya ng mom and dad to take that course. Ayaw niya talaga. And she was only trying to please the parents. It became a stressor. After 3 years, bumigay. She ended up in depression and anxiety. I had the chance to talk to her. She opened up to me. And afterwards, I opened up to the parents. Do you know what's causing her depression? And nagulat sila, hindi nila alam. So, find out what the stress is because no matter how much medicines you take, pag yung stress and trigger is there, it will not help. So, it has to be together. Medications, therapy, iwasan yung stress and triggers, whatever that may be. Maski kamag-anak mo yun, who, like I said, maski kamag-anak kung negative and then kinausap mo na, iba yung trato sa'yo, hindi pa rin, iwasan yon. It doesn't matter kung kamag-anak mo yon. Self-love, that's the most important thing.
So, Manong, since you mentioned earlier about supporting citizens suffering from this illness, ano naman yung role of faith, family, and friends to help someone who is going through the mental illness?
Okay, dami yan, faith, family, and friends. Let's deal with faith first. And this can be very controversial, especially Christine. I know your background. So there is a myth, a very prevalent myth, that ang pagkakaroon ng mental health disorder is a spiritual crisis. They say we have it because kulang kami sa pananampalataya or kulang kami sa dasal. I know this firsthand because I have people who have come to me or pinadaan kay Raquel, my wife. Ano ang sinasabi nila? Sabihin mo kay Ari, magdasal lang and tell him to have faith. Hindi ko lang masabi sa kanila na, do you know how often I pray? So, how much more do I have to pray? And are you saying makasalanan ako? Again, like I said, having a mental health disorder, ihalin tulad nyo sa mga ibang physical na karamdaman. Medicine and faith, they are not enemies. They're supposed to go hand in hand and they're not mutually exclusive. Diba? Find the medication, seek professional help. Diba? When you have the medication, the therapy, by all means, pray. Like I said, at times, it's only by God's grace that you will survive. Pray because minsan dito ka lang kumakapit eh. Diba? Dito ka lang kumakapit. Allow me to share something with you. No? When I was undergoing one of my attacks, beside me was a quote from the Bible. I don't know who put it there. I believe this was Deuteronomy 31:6, and it said, correct me if I'm wrong, Christine, you probably know your Bible better than me, but it says, God said, do not fear, for never will I leave you and never will I forsake you. But you know, for a lot of us who are suffering during the time, yung pakiramdam ko is that, God, not only did you leave me, not only did you forsake me, but you are punishing me at pinapadaan mo ako sa ganito. So I remember I was questioning God kung bakit niya ako pinadaan sa ganito or kung bakit niya ginawa sa akin to. It is later in life that I realized, and it was this: God didn't give me the disorder, but at this point in time, God is now using me to reach out to other people and make them aware and hopefully save a life and not make them go through the suffering that I went through. And in addition, okay, let's add to this.
Okay,
And
okay.
that is why if you go to any psychiatric ward, you will not see any spiritual scriptures. You will not see the Bible of the Catholics, the Quran of the Muslims, the Bhagavad Gita of the Hindus, or the Tripitaka of the Buddhists. Why? It is not a spiritual crisis. That is a mental disorder. And like I said, there's something wrong with our brains. If you, for those of you who have children and they're suffering from cancer and they're undergoing chemotherapy, would you tell your daughter that, you know what, it shows a lack of faith that you're taking, that you're having chemotherapy? Would you say that to somebody who's suffering from cancer, who's undergoing treatment? No. But that's what a lot of people tell people like us when we're under medication, is that we just need to have faith. Hindi. It has to go hand in hand. Your medication and your faith in God or whoever you believe in. The role of family and friends, something
Mhm.
very important is that it's very difficult to go through a mental disorder kung mag-isa ka. You always need a support system, somebody to help you. Now, preferably, yung support system mo is your family. But what I've noticed from our support group, and there's close to 6,000 of us, ano, hindi nila malapitan yung pamilya nila. Why? It's because the family do not understand them. So when they go to the family and say that they're undergoing depression, diba? Or at times they even say, because very often they don't use the word gusto ko na magpakamatay, although some use it, but you will hear words. Take note of this because you might hear this. They'll say pagod na ako, hindi ko na kaya. Okay? When the parents hear this, and a lot say this, ay, so anak, nag-iinarte ka lang, or kulang ka lang sa pansin, or dapat positive ka, ba? Labas lang tayo, sige. That's not supposed to be the case, but you cannot really blame the family or friends. Why? Because they don't understand. Kulang nga sa awareness. If they knew, they wouldn't treat their children or their friends in that way. But they play an important role because they need somebody to help them. They need somebody to talk to. Do not underestimate the power of listening to somebody. Because kuminsan, all it takes is for you to listen. You don't even have to give advice. You don't even have to talk. At times, ang kailangan lang nila is makinig ka. If they're able to vent, ilabas nila yung sama ng loob nila, yung pinagdadaanan nila, that can very well change a life, save their life from doing so. Allow me to share an incident. It's not talking, but simpleng bagay lang to. In one of the events that we held, this is one of the first events of Kylie. So the event was ongoing, daming tao. One of the members ng support group namin, she came in. And I go, oh, hi. She goes, Manong Ari, I can't stay long. I just came to say hi. I go, but she didn't look too good. I could see in her face, and I'm sure you can see it when there's something wrong with a person. I could see na parang may problema siya. So I go, how are you? Are you okay? And then she hesitated and she goes, okay lang ako, Manong Ari. And he goes, I have to go. I really can't stay long. So I gave her a hug. And I could feel yung hug niya. It was different. But I go, afterwards, I go, take care, mag-ingat ka. Okay? So this person leaves. 15 minutes later, she calls me up. And she goes, Manong Ari, actually, I went to see you para magpaalam na. I was all set to kill myself. But after talking to you, it made me realize that there's at least one person who cares for me, one person who was willing to listen to me, one person to ask how I was. And with that hug, it also made me feel good. it made me feel like somebody still cares for me. And she goes, maraming salamat, Manong Ari. And she no longer took her life. She's alive up to today. And every so often, she gets in touch with me and she always says, Manong Ari, let me know what I can do to help you, to support the group. Gagawin ko because I owe you my life. And I say, no, you don't. Diba? I'm just glad that, you're there and keep strong. Diba? Laban lang palagi. Kapit, wag ka bumitaw. So to those of you who may be suffering from a disorder, I'm telling you, you're not alone. I'm here for you. I know how you feel. Alam ko yung pinagdadaanan nyo. Kapit lang kayo. You're not alone. Get in touch with me. Afterwards, Christine will probably post how you can get in touch with me. But remember, hindi kayo nag-iisa. Ang kailangan lang is ask for help and we'll be here for you.
That's an inspiring story, Mano, on how to be a good listener.
And there's a reason, Christine, why God gave us two ears and one mouth.
Yes.
It's because we're supposed to listen twice as
Mm-hmm.
much as we talk. Because there are people who do not know how to listen. Normally, pag nag-uusap kayo, yung kinakausap mo is not really listening. Ang iniisip nila, ano ang sasabihin ko pag
Mm-hmm.
tumigil na to? But they're not
Yes.
really listening and trying to understand. And that's
Mhm.
very important for people with a mental health disorder. Makinig ka lang, you can very well save a life. Learn to listen, people.
Especially, di ba, Mano, if you're a motivational speaker, you really have to listen more.
Yes, because
Mhm.
how can you help people if you truly don't listen? You should, some people can hear, but they're not listening. You should
Yes.
be able to listen, diba? So you can really comprehend, and then you can help, and then you can motivate.
Yes, yes. And Manong, aside from everything that you've mentioned about mental health, now, can you share your take on how to see life in a new perspective?
Again, I know bad things happen to you, and there are some things beyond your control. But like I said earlier, life is 10% of what happens to you, 90% of how you respond to it. So it's possible to go through the same experience, like the pandemic, the way Christine chose to look at it. And for those who are suffering, you can go through the same situation. But if you choose to look at the bright side or choose to find a way to deal with it, life can be better. Here's a story. There were twins who grew up with a father who was a womanizer, a drunk, and a gambler. Now, when one of the twins grew up, he grew up to be a womanizer, a drunk, and a gambler. So one of the friends approached him and he goes, how did you turn out to be that way? And he goes, what do you expect? I grew up with a father who's a womanizer, a gambler, and a drunk. So I turned out to be this way. Now, this same friend came across the twin. The twin was a very successful lawyer. And he asked the other twin, how did you turn out to be a successful lawyer? And he said, it was because my father was a womanizer, a gambler, and a drunk. And I didn't want to turn out to be like him. I wanted to set a better example for my children. So, again, same situation. But if you choose, because it is a choice, your perspective is a choice. If you choose to live your life differently, then you can. It is a matter of choice.
Wow, that's a wonderful advice, Manong Ari. Let's change topic, Manong Ari. Since on your intro, we mentioned a lot about businesses and you as an entrepreneur for a long time na. Okay, so let's talk about your new business collaboration that I'm so excited about kasi the moment I heard about Forest House, sobrang na-upset ako. I even messaged you, right, if I can create this video for the wedding of my brother kasi sobrang
Yes.
upset. Not just me, but everyone who experienced your service. And now, can you share with all of us the revival of Forest House.
Okay, before anything else, I'd like to say thank you for you posting that video of your brother.
Yes.
People really appreciated that. That was a long
Ooh.
thing. And there were also other people who posted mostly pictures of
Yes, I thought.
how things were. And
Mhm.
I remember in the intro of the show, you mentioned that you had a chance to stay in the bed and breakfast of
Yes,
Forest
the whole
House.
family.
So, on behalf of Raquel and I, thank you for supporting Forest House. And I hope when you do visit Baguio, you get to visit the new version of Forest House. Now, that all happened. Hindi ko akalain na mabubuhay ulit ang Forest House because that thing closed as early as March 15, ano? And then we tried to negotiate with the owners, but we couldn't really get along when it came to the price, so we decided to close. So, in my mind, mahal magpatayo ng restaurant. So, sa isip namin, Raquel, we were thinking that maybe in 3 to 4 years, we'll be able to put up a restaurant again. Babalik ang Forest House in 3 to 4 years. And of course, we did our prayers and we go, let's leave it to God. There's always something in store. Everything, something like that happens. And lo and behold, this last month lang to, a friend put me together with his friend. And we sat down together, kasama si Raquel. And then kwento-kwento lang kami. Her name is Tita Venus, ano? And after making kwento, after 2 hours, because we were talking about mental health, because ang dami rin siya alam, and then she brought it out lang. She goes, you know what? I have a place and there's an area there that you can turn into a restaurant. And I also have a garden. You may be able to use it. She goes, I know about Forest House. I know how long it's been there. We've been there. Sabi niya pa, she belongs to this company. I'll mention it, McCann Erickson. When our company used to go there, we used to close the whole Forest House just for our company. Pag nag-company meetings kami yun, malaki, kino-close down namin para solo namin. So I know the reputation. She goes, consider opening Forest House in my place. So a week later, pumunta kami doon. And then it just worked out. Everything went so smoothly. We saw it, we talked, we negotiations, konti lang. Next thing you know, we're open already. It just happened that way. So nagulat din ako that that blessing came that soon. Last week, I was having dinner with my staff, and I was saying, I'm so glad that some of us were together, those 10 of our staff already, ano? And I was saying, I'm sure alam natin lahat that this wouldn't happen that soon. Kala natin 3 to 4 years, but I guess we've been blessed and we're all together. And I'm so glad after 7 months, kasama ulit tayo, buhay ulit ang Forest House. Not exactly the way it was before, but in another way, especially for the pandemic time. So, yung mga nakikinig, kung pumasyal kayo sa Baguio, di ba? I hope you visit Forest House in collaboration with Venus Garden. And malay mo, in one of those times, guest singer pa si Christine. We look forward to that.
I can't wait, Manong. I can't wait. So, to all the Baguio viewers and the visitors who would visit Baguio, please make sure to check out Forest House collaboration with Venus Garden.
Looking
Okay.
forward to seeing all of you.
Yay! Manong, sad to say, I don't want to end this episode with you. Kasi we've been planning this for a long time and now it's really
Yeah,
happening.
no, na-postpone to na ilang beses.
Okay, so before we end this show, what would you want our viewers to take away from your talk?
Um, Depression is it's not a weakness, it's not a character flaw. It is not God punishing you for sins you have committed or karma finally catching up with you. It is not being lazy or slow or looking for attention or as most people say, nag-aarte lang yan or kulang ka sa pansin na tila ba kathalang ng aming pag-iisip itong nararamdaman namin at pinili namin na magdusa ng ganito. It is a real disease. like cancer, diabetes, tuberculosis. It is not something that we just make up in our minds. And being something that's real, you cannot will or pray away a mental health disorder in the same way that you cannot will or pray away cancer, tuberculosis, or other physical diseases. Palitan na natin ang ating pananaw hingil sa pangkaisipan na kalusugan. Ito ay totoong karamdaman, halintulad ng anuman mga pisikal na karamdaman. It is only when we change our perception of mental health that it truly is a real disease. Can we start to tackle the problems of society that pervades this thing regarding mental health and stop the stigma that surrounds it? To all of you, I wish that your lives be free of pain, sorrow, and suffering, and be full of love, empathy, and compassion. Ako po si Manong Ari. Maraming salamat po sa inyong lahat.
Thank you, Manong.
Thank you, Christine.
And me as the host, I've learned a lot from you. I realized a lot of things that despite the pandemic, despite whatever comes our way, we need to always have a positive outlook in life.
True. So whatever you've learned, Christine, sana ipasa mo sa mga iba. We can be part of the advocacy. Like we need all the help that we can get. Like you said, you did learn some things. Share it with other people, please. We in the advocacy would truly help all the help that we can, and keep up with what you're doing. I wish you the best in your
Thank
show. May you have more shows. That God gave you a talent. It was meant to be shared with other people, and that's what you should do with it.
Thank you, Manong, for always supporting me. And yes, I will upload more covers. And I will be one of your guest singers, okay?
Looking forward, looking forward. And how to get in touch with me. Christine,
Okay.
thank you so much. Appreciate it. I'm glad we're able to finally do this show.
Thank you, Manong. Stay safe. I'll see you next
You
year.
too. Keep safe, stay healthy, Christine. Maraming salamat. And good night.
Good night. Bye.